Gohan from Dragon Ball Z, and you're listening to the Monsters with Attitude podcast. Like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, embrace the attitude! Yeah!
Hi, this is Alan Henry. I play King Kong and Sky King in the Monsterverse, and you're listening to the Monsters with Attitude podcast. So, like, comment, and subscribe, and remember, embrace the attitude, yeah!
What's going on, Kaiju family? Welcome to another episode of Raw Attitude. Excuse me, I'm tripping over my words already. Where I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my brother from another mother, Mr. Eric Stolp. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man.
Or I should say, how are you, buddy? Because he's in visiting.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I just want to say, Joe, happy Ultraman Day.
Happy Ultraman
obviously
Day.
Very fitting for our guest today. So I'm super excited to talk with him and about his experiences and what he's done for the franchise over here in the States.
I agree. And without further ado, we are going to bring on our guest. It is Mr. Jeff Gomez, who is the CEO of Starlight Runner Entertainment, as well as I don't know if necessarily CEO or whatnot of Ultraman Connection, but we're going to figure that out. But has a huge hand to play in helping bring Ultraman stateside to the Western audiences. So we're super excited to talk to him. So without further ado, Jeff, how are you? Thank you so much for coming.
Fantastic to be here. Monsters with Attitude. That is awesome. You got to slip a little Ultraman in those opening titles, though.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yep. Work in progress. We'll get there for sure. Jeff, thank you so much. I know you're so busy and you're being so gracious with your time. So thank you.
Yes.
I want to get right into it because I know we only do have you for a limited amount of time. As we start each and every one of our interviews, what was your first or earliest memory of Godzilla, Ultraman, the tokusatsu genre?
Wow. My earliest memory was being called into the living room by my dad to show me the thing that was on television. And the thing that was on television was much later I would realize, because I was like 3 or 4 when this was going on, Godzilla versus the Thing.
Nice.
And there was Godzilla coming out of the dirt, rising. And my eyes looked like they were propped up with toothpicks.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yes.
And then he fought this big bug, and he wanted an egg, and all kinds of buildings got flattened, and I was just so in love. Little cartoon hearts and birdies were dancing around.
Mm-hmm.
That was just it for me. I eventually learned his name, and then just would read the TV guide from cover to cover, scouring it for any sign of Godzilla.
Yes. Kids these days don't realize how easy they have it with streaming and just everything at your fingertips. I'm a 90s baby, so I'm kind of like on that cusp where we had to still look at TV guides and stuff.
Kind of hunt around, yeah.
Kids these days, back in my day, but it was kids these days have it.
It's hard to understand the hole that is in your heart, because what you want and love most is not available. Is something that you have to wait for, and that anticipation, and then knowing it's coming late next week, and the days until it happens, with commercials and a crappy English translation and everything. just that to me that aspect of desire is something that is not as tangible these days as it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So when was your first exposure to Ultraman?
Some years later, around 70, 71, thereabouts, I was, my dad and mom had been divorced, and dad moved to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico had Ultraman syndicated at that time. It wasn't on the mainland, but you can watch Ultraman twice a week, I think, on some children's 3-hour block on Spanish television. So I happened to be walking by as a little kid and saw a giant monster, a kaiju, on TV. And I thought it was some kind of commercial and so forth. He was rampaging around. And suddenly this giant dude in a red and silver landed and started smacking him around. I couldn't believe it. It was a Godzilla movie a couple of times a week on television, essentially. Boy, I didn't know Spanish before, but I had to learn it fast to figure out what everyone was saying.
Right.
That's great. That's so funny because. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Just mentioning the following year when I came back, they were rerunning Ultraman, but also Ultra 7. And that was where I was old enough to really kind of get into the story and appreciate the magnificence of some of those amazing confrontations. The King Joe episode blew me away in terms of what was going on in the show, how they were pulling off these effects. Even in a child's mind, the illusion was just incredible for me. And it really, locked Ultra 7 for me as my Ultraman.
Were you, Ultra 7 is a lot more mature. I think personally, just because of how violent and like bloody it is. Were you kind of like blown back to like how violent it was when you were first watching it as a kid?
I was actually. It was kind of behind the couch viewing, and not because I was afraid of the kaiju. It was the fact that it was a kind of brutal show, reflective, I think, of the rise of the Iron Curtain kind of tensions that were going on in the world, where spies were becoming a big deal. And the threat of infiltration by dark forces was tangible for democratic countries. So there was that kind of feeling of paranoia in Ultra 7 and shadowiness and scariness that I found really intriguing.
Yeah. So you said Ultra 7 is probably your favorite Ultraman. What is your is that like your favorite Ultra series? And then like what's your favorite Ultra Kaiju overall?
In many ways, it remains my favorite Ultra series simply because, like with Doctor Who or anything that you grow up with, the one that made the real connections kind of stays with you. There might have been technically more proficient series and more spectacular series, and even some more dramatic series in terms of the genius of the concept and so forth. But love is love. For kaiju, I have a handful. Ella King is a super. A big connector for me because he was kind of my first, dinosaur-like kaiju that I connected with. King Joe was scary as heck for me when I was a kid, and so he lingers. For goofy kaiju, Dinosaur Tank. Hey.
Yes.
Me, the dinosaur.
I love it.
I can't help but love a little Gomez.
Yes.
what are you going to do?
Yes, I love it. So I want to transition here for a minute to tell us about Starlight Runner. What encouraged you to do this? Can you give us a little background on where your mind was and how this kind of came together?
It emerges all out of this stuff that we're talking about. When you love something, you want to plunge into it, get lost in it, figure it out. Our nerd core emerges, and we want to create databases of all the information that we love about our favorite thing.
Yeah.
And what fascinated me as I got a little older and my family moved to Hawaii, my mom and sister and me in 1975. That is kismet. That is the golden moment of Japanese superhero genre shows. Just pre-Super Sentai, all the changing shows, Kamen Rider, Kikaida, Inazuman, Zaboga, these incredible live-action tokusatsu series were airing in Hawaii at the exact time that we moved there. And what was fascinating to me was something we now have called Japanese media mix. This notion that that in Japan, licensing rights and deals moved extremely quickly. So something brand new can come out in various media formats and toys and manga and all this sort of thing to create a kind of persistent world. So I started chasing intellectual properties across different media platforms back in 1975, even down to the live Kamen Rider V3, Kikaider and Kikaider 01 show at the Honolulu International Coliseum, which was mind-blowing. There they were in front of me, flipping around, battling each other, locking up the Coliseum so no one could escape, creating some hysteria. It was awesome. Being brave enough at 11 years old to take a bus out of Honolulu to get to a movie theater outside of the city that was showing the final Kikaider movie. That sense of adventure, of pursuing pieces of a greater universe is what I call transmedia storytelling, particularly when the narrative is different on each of these media platforms. So that became the dragon I chased all the way through my years playing Dungeons and Dragons and my initial forays into tabletop games and developing role-playing game content, and into my work in comic books in the 1990s with Valiant and Acclaim Comics. And that's where I started to practice this idea of media mix, which was more like a transmedia storytelling as we know it today, as practiced by the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Star Wars and Harry Potter and so forth. So I began to when Valiant got acquired by Acclaim, I became the bridge between the comic book company and the video game company. And so I was able to design transmedia experiences for the fans. Read the comic, play the game. They're not exactly the same. They explore different aspects of this universe. And here's something new that'll blow your mind: a website that houses lore. Lore is on the website because my lore couldn't fit into these games. Big producer of lore.
Yes.
So I became a producer back then of video games like the Turok Dinosaur Hunter franchise, the Magic the Gathering video games and comic books and other extensions of Magic in the 90s. And to me, this became a model for storytelling that I formed Starlight Runner in 2000 to actually practice by going to toy companies, video game publishers, and movie studios and saying, hey, we can take your 2 hours of content and turn it into dozens of hours of engaging universe content, so that the investments that you're making into these movies will last beyond the release cycle of the film. Is that clear?
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I mean,
Yeah, just expanding
yeah,
the lore and everything to what was just one thing, but you're broadening the horizons of all these IPs and everything, which is exactly what we want, because when we love something, we want more of it. We can't get enough of it, so we want more, we want bigger, and that, yeah, you're definitely doing a service to all the fans.
And to a lot of these companies at that time, this is 2000, 2001, 2002, they didn't get it. They were like, what?
yeah.
So they took a risk on me because of my success with Turok and Magic. Okay. And the results were very striking. So they so this kind of practice, this notion of a story world as opposed to a screenplay or a season of teleplays, a story world that could accommodate many different media, has become the thing. Something that we all want to do and engage with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's super impressive. You're kind of like the grandfather of the business model that is today, and that's very impressive and very.
Great that you point that out, Joe. This is as much a business model as a creative endeavor, and that's what distinguished my work and that of Starlight Runner. I had to teach myself the production process of all these different media platforms so that they can be synchronized, so that we knew when to start development on a video game as opposed to a novel or the movie, and so forth, and sync everything so that it can come out in an orchestrated fashion. So that takes a good deal of technical understanding, which I have a great team that helps me with that, and business knowledge.
That's awesome. Total side note, my my aunt and uncle live in Hawaii. They used to live in Honolulu, and now they live on the Big Island. My uncle is Hawaiian. He's half Hawaiian, half Japanese.
Wow.
And he's he is the reason that I actually had certain Ultraman things when I was younger, because there really wasn't. I live in a very small town as it is, but there really wasn't Ultraman stuff in the early 90s here in the States, at least accessible to me. But there was things, I think probably because there was such a large Japanese population in Hawaii, or a larger, maybe not super large,
Sure.
They had a lot of like those VHSs and little toys and stuff. And every time they would come over, they came back home, as they call it here to the States, to the mainland, once a year, and they would always bring me something, whether it's like little gashapons or whatever.
Awesome.
So total side note, no relevant to anything, but yeah.
To this day, the population of Hawaii is entirely enamored with Kamen Rider and Kikaider and so forth, because it was a very powerful element in Hawaiian popular culture.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. My uncle, obviously older than me, but he was a bigger kid than me. I would be like, "Oh, Uncle Gary, did you see this?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I saw this. Did you see?" And he'd rattle off, 3 or 4 different animes or Ultraman or a Godzilla movie, and I'm like, "No, what is that?" And yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. Again, I'm sorry, Eric. I know you got something.
Yeah. Sorry, Eric.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Are you there, Eric? Are you there?
Tell us about is I see the poster in the back, the Never Surrender. Is that kind of like is that your motto? Is that your mission statement? I know. I know a little bit about it, but would you like to explain your motto?
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Never Surrender is a program, an educational program that I do for kids. It's a talk, a seminar. Sometimes, there's a little curriculum that I use in terms of coaching and so forth. Young people who are creative. the philosophy emerged out of growing up in tough times, a tough neighborhood, being kind of the outsider, the kind of nerdy kid who looked a little funny and was into things that nobody else was into, like reading the prose Edda at 11 years old.
Right.
Developing a personal philosophy that manifested the force of Godzilla in terms of being able to move forward through life, through any adversity. And to even have that kind of half sad orchestral Japanese music in the background as I moved forward, was a never surrender attitude. And it really kind of pulled me through. Now it's more figurative than something that alludes to battle or anything like that. It's just, never surrender the ability to assert your will to make things happen for yourself, and that's, I've gotten to talk with hundreds of thousands of kids around the world, from grade school through college student, a few corporations, about this kind of philosophical pursuit of the actualization of what's in your mind. Could you imagine what kind of a fantasy job is this that I have?
You are living my dream. That's right. I think you are living every nerd or geek's dream. I just, so much respect and so impressed with how you were able to take your passion for all these things, nerdy or geeky, whatever you want to call them, and turn it into such a successful business. It's very impressive.
Joe and Eric, I am not a rocket scientist. I'm not some brilliant genius. What I was someone who said, how does this work? Can somebody explain this to me? Mm-hmm. This is interesting. Give me more. And so it was just really kind of studying. I wasn't so good at math, but reading Variety from cover to cover so that I can understand how the movie business worked, that I could do. How does a comic book get made? How does a video game happen? Being able to learn all those things and applying a little Dungeons and Dragons mentality, earns me a living.
That's amazing.
And honestly, I just want to chime in here, that your whole perspective on never giving up, I think, especially in our fandom and a lot of the geek and the nerd fandoms, I think needs a lot more of that, honestly. Today it's a lot different than what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, because let's be honest, we were nerds. Anybody who watches this is more of a nerd. So we went through that hardship where, it wasn't cool to like this stuff and we were looked down on and stuff like that. So you always had to hide yourself as being a fan or liking that kind of stuff and everything. And it's so different how the culture's changed, where it's more of, out in the open, it's very popular. It's very the theme, and everything. And I still think that we need messages like that to people like us that, if they don't understand it or they're still not there where they're comfortable, hey, I like Ultraman and I'm going to express it and everything like that. Hey, I like Godzilla and I'm going to express it. I love those kind of messages and we need stuff like that. So I thank you for putting out that message, for talking to people and everything, and really conveying that, hey, don't hide just because you like something different than everybody else, because there's a lot more of us than you think. I mean, honestly, with internet coming around and everything and doing stuff like this, you really get to learn about things and meet people and everything like that. And it's just things that you just never even heard of or thought of, or people you never even thought of that like this kind of stuff. And it's really nice to see, more of that kind of building and stuff like that.
Eric, the one thing I didn't do much of was hide it. and I paid the price for that. It's hard to believe, I know the three of us are well aware, but it's hard to believe that you could be really, kind of knocked for liking anime. Or to want to watch dudes in rubber suits and so forth, but I didn't, and that was what drew the friends that I have today. That's what drew them to me when I was a little kid, because once you do find members of that tribe, they're going to stick with you.
Absolutely 100%.
Well, Eric and I are a testament to that. I mean, we met at G Fest in Chicago, and we didn't grow up together or anything. And like so many kids, I mean, I grew up being a fan of Dragon Ball Z and Godzilla and Pokemon and all the normal stuff from the 90s. And all my other friends grew out of it, and I never did, and it was like I was the only one that still collected and read and played and whatever. And that's what was that's one of the greatest things I think about these conventions, specifically talking about G Fest, is it's the toys, it's the collectibles, that's all fantastic, but it's being able to meet people like Eric that have become like my wife and I, him and his wife, are best friends. They come and they stay with us. Once a year we go and see them over Thanksgiving, and it's become a friendship or a family. And that's greater than any collectible.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. Let's at some point let's talk about G Fest. By the way, because I want to mention a few things that are happening there and clear up a few controversies that are happening on X right now.
Sure. Yeah, we actually have a little thing at the end there where we're going to bring it up. So perfect.
Good deal.
So we'll continue with our discussion. So, you founded Starlight Runner and everything like that, and you're obviously a very big Ultraman fan. Did that give you the motivation to really go after Sue Breyer or contact him like, hey, like, I want to work with you guys to bring this stuff over because, I really do believe that this stuff needs to be shown over here in the West?
Well, I had wanted to work with the Japanese from when I moved out to Hawaii in 1975. I thought I might wind up there and create manga or anime or something like that. I really wanted to be there, and such was not the case. My mom wanted to move home to New York, and that's where I was for many years. And as I climbed the ladder in Hollywood and became a producer, I started to send signals out into the world that I really love, Japanese anime, but I especially love tokusatsu, live action Japanese content, and special effects content. And I just kept putting that out into the world. And what that got me was a couple of meetings with Toei, and they just didn't kind of get it. Why would we need you? It was really what it boiled down to. And it so happened that Danny Simon, who was the CEO of the licensing group, heard about me and my love for tokusatsu, and he reached out to me, and we met at his office in Los Angeles, and we talked about a lot of things. I had no idea that he was chosen to represent Ultraman, as the Japanese were starting to consider moving back into the United States with the property. But he said, do you know anything about this big silver dude? What is he? Does he eat?
Does he eat?
What, is that a costume he's wearing? And I said, these questions I can answer, and started to give it to him. And he said, well, would you be interested in helping me with the licensing of Ultraman in the United States? And I said, yes. And he said, well, why don't you come with me to Tokyo and talk to Tsuburaya about Starlight Runner assisting the licensing group in building a fan base and proliferating Ultraman in the United States. And I said, I'll go buy the tickets. And he said, no, I'll take care of the plane. Take it easy, kid. And that's where the fantasy started to become true.
When you had those meetings with Tsuburaya, like what was your guys' goal? Like, what was your mission statement? Did you guys have like a 1, 5, 10-year plan?
These are great questions. Jeez.
Thank you. We try.
Ultraman had encountered some issues in the 1990s, and there was a legal situation that prevented Tsuburaya Productions from extending Ultraman internationally, particularly in the West, for quite some time. The legal issues were resolved about 5 or 6 years ago, which was when not long after that, Danny reached out to me. They reached out to Danny because he had a reputation in Asia as kind of the god of licensing. So they wanted to kind of reestablish a presence for Ultraman in North America. But the proposal that Danny and I had was, let's not stop with some nostalgia licensing. Let's use nostalgia licensing to rebuild the franchise in the United States so that everyone can catch up, enjoy the current Ultraman content that's being made every year by Tsuburaya. Every year is a new series, but also, who knows, maybe there can be Ultraman projects in the United States. Sure. And that was exactly the intent. It coincided with the desire of Tsuburaya Productions to bring Ultraman to Hollywood. And so we developed together a strategy for reintroducing Ultraman to the world. And my particular theory behind this was to activate the current fan base of Ultraman, which were people like us. Yeah. So that's older people who are nostalgic, but would want to introduce our kids or our nieces and nephews or younger buddies to the franchise. So we become kind of these torchbearers who can help to ignite excitement around Ultraman. That's, by the way, exactly what wound up happening.
So one of your goals or one of your missions was probably to put it on like social media, where obviously you made a YouTube channel called Ultraman Connection. Was like one of your big plans to really do that and bring the kind of content over here where everybody could kind of watch that? Because I know you're very heavily involved with Ultraman Connection and everything like that. Sure.
The YouTube channel actually predated my coming to the franchise. Okay. What I encouraged them to do was, get high quality English dubs for the various series, particularly the contemporary ones that were coming out. To have a good English subtitles on everything, and to help me to create content that connected with fans and made them see that this wasn't a nostalgia bid, and it wasn't even a kind of half-hearted export of Ultraman content on YouTube. This was something alive that loved you back. And that's when we started doing the virtual events and building Ultraman Connection as a hub that interacted with fans, creating a newsletter, just all kinds of, and developing a convention presence across the country.
Excellent. I got to say, I think you guys have done a phenomenal job. There are, excuse me, friends of mine that are, anime fans or fans of other like nerd culture that weren't, they knew Ultraman, but they weren't really aware of Ultraman. And I've had more questions from them over the past couple of years because they're seeing it more, and they're like, "Oh, wait, what is this?" And I'm like, "It's Ultraman," and they're like, "That looks kind of cool," and I'm like, "I know, I've been telling you, But so that kind of segues into my next question. I'm curious, what, in your opinion, do you think was your biggest challenge in bringing Ultraman to the Western audiences?
That's really, really great question.
Thank you.
In Japan, the media mix mentality is different from transmedia storytelling in that with media mix, every iteration of the character, in this case Ultraman, could be entirely different from the one before and the one after. They're kind of like soft reboots over and over and over again. And the Ultraman that's in the manga has little to do with the Ultraman that's in the TV show. There's an anime that is completely disconnected from any reality that Ultraman is. So that's actually a somewhat tougher sell these days in the United States. Well, which Ultraman do I follow? Where do I start? What's the access route? And if I come in through Ultraman Rising on Netflix and then go to Ultraman Arc, which is currently streaming on YouTube, the host is different, the setting is different, and everything's different. So what do I do? So that's a little bit of a challenge, and I guess the response that we have is to communicate this notion of a continuum, this notion that there are multiple realities within the Ultraman universe, and but there is a constant in M78, the Land of Light. It exists in all of these realities, or some iteration of it, and that way the Ultras can visit one another, even though they are wildly different. Some are animated, and some are, from YouTube series and so forth, and they all kind of crisscross.
Absolutely. So you talked about Ultraman Rising, which I think was a very big success on Netflix. I've heard nothing but good raving reviews of it. Myself, Joe, we have watched it. We enjoyed it early and everything like that. So it was just a very heartwarming movie and stuff like that. So with that, what did you have any involvement on bringing that to life? Like, did you help them kind of get the partnership with Netflix, or help Netflix get the partnership with Tsuburaya to make this movie? What did you have your hand in with that?
So my formal title with Tsuburaya is that of transmedia producer. Okay. So my job is to advise them on all aspects of media in the United States, and because I understood a little bit how the studios work and how Netflix work and what the various things that are involved in animation production on the American side, and I was familiar with Lucasfilm and how it operated, I was able to give whatever advice they asked of me. A part of what was wonderful about the entire process is, having access to the development process from the very beginning, and being able to simply express my opinion not just as someone who has been involved in a theatrical feature development for 20 years, but also as a fan and as someone who fundamentally understood Ultraman, and also understood that Shannon Tyndall's project was created without Ultraman being attached to it. So his original concept of that movie was it was a different character. It wasn't Ultraman. It was somebody he made up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He never even considered the possibility that it could be Ultraman, even though he loved Ultraman.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Fascinating.
And so watching the process of adapting the original material into the Ultraman universe was absolutely fascinating, and how wonderful he was, because that involves some personal compromise. He invented something that had to be smushed into the Ultraman universe.
Yeah.
It involves some a little heartache. It was all handled so wonderfully.
To keep on the topic of Ultraman Rising, it's a new take. It's a modern take, but I think a very well done kind of reimagining, if you will, of Ultraman. How do you think the older fans have reacted to Ultraman Rising? And in the flip side, how do you think some of the newer fans will react to the older stuff?
Well, that's great. That's a good question. Well, it was just wonderful, and a lot of this is what we espouse as Starlight Runner to our clients, and sometimes the clients don't listen to this. They kind of sometimes don't care as much. But Shannon and John Aoshima, who made Ultraman Rising, they cared. And what they did was they brought together a battery of talent that really cared about Ultraman. So when you care and put, we call them Easter eggs, but what they call them are homages. They want to show you that they know you and you know them within the context of the world. And there are so many references to various Ultraman series, not just the original, in Ultraman Rising, that the fans who know and love the product, even though the story's kind of different and there's kind of humor in it and there's some kid stuff in it, they can see through all that and go, they love me, I love them, we love each other. So that's really, that puts them on our side and makes them advocates, torchbearers, apostles for the feature. That's why after the first week, when the movie was in the top 10, 2 weeks later it was number 2. That almost never happens, where a movie on Netflix goes up.
Right.
But it did, and that's because of that love, and also because that Ken Sato character was quite charming.
Yes, he was.
Fans, they're on the TikTok.
Yes,
but so that aspect was great, and the thing that I really warmed my heart, and to all the fans who did this, you have my heartfelt thanks. Fans got on social media and said, hey, if you like this, you might like, and then they would list various Ultra series or bring them over to Ultraman Arc on the Subaraya official channel on YouTube. Just helping the new fans, because a lot of the times we get jealous. Suddenly our date got popular with other people, and so we want to. You can't have my love.
Yep.
But in this case, they're willing to share, which I think is wonderful, wonderful and touching. And it's going to allow for us to keep doing this. So thank you all.
Well, thank you for all the work you guys have done. And on a quick side note, I don't mean to cut you off, Eric. The I showed Ultraman Rising, and Eric showed Ultraman Rising to our partners, and they loved it. It's just such a great, wholesome film. It's fun, it's charming, it's cute. My wife was in love with Emmy, of course, and but what I loved, and I wanted to make a point to tell you this. I love the fact that there was a film made about not just a relationship with a father and daughter, with Ken and Emmy, but with Ken and his dad. I kind of miss that. I don't think there's a lot of films these days that have a father-son relationship, and I think that's important. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciated that story and the film.
It could have the relationship could have easily been played just cute, and Emmy could have been effectively a prop.
Yep.
We see this to this day in other shows and movies. There's a streaming series, not to name names, but a streaming series called Eric, about a runaway kid, and his dad plays this, is like a puppeteer and is a little going nuts. So the puppet follows him around as the dad is pursuing the kid, and that the character of the kid in that series, the suspenseful, dramatic series, has no personality whatsoever. He's basically a prop, played to pluck at our heartstrings every now and then, and that's it. And what a drag. When Emmy, when you look at that character's face, you see an intelligent being, a baby. But the expressiveness and the emotions and desires and mischief in that character's face, no wonder it's connecting with people outside of our nerd zone.
Absolutely.
A really smart choice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback off of Joe. Is that basically, to me, that movie was very emotional and heartfelt because I have two daughters, and watching, him kind of take care of Emmy and stuff like that, like, just brought back a lot of memories for me when taking care of my daughter and everything like that. And it was just so heartfelt and everything that I think a lot of people just were drawn to that because it was a very different take on the character and everything. And it just wasn't all about the kaiju action and everything. There was layers to it. There was, it was the him and his dad relationship. It was him and Emmy's relationship. It was, trying to get Emmy back to her mom and everything. Like, there was different things going on where it wasn't just a flat out just single story. There was different things. And I think that's what really drew a lot of people, because there was just so many things going on and a lot of emotions. And I just love that. It was very different. And it's good to mix it up and make something that we're so used to for so long different, because, you don't want to get stale and everything like that. And you want to get something that really speaks to the fans and everything, and maybe people with the same experiences and stuff. So
Ultraman Rising, it manifests a story model that I have been advocating a lot lately. It was a model, actually, that I've been espousing with Subaraya and all our clients, and that is collective journey. Essentially, collective journey looks at your story world as a system. Okay, so everything in this system is kind of functioning, but there are some problems, flaws in the system, usually wrought by some kind of traumatic event. And what's beautiful about systemic narrative is that you can look sympathetically, see through the eyes of each character in the story. And in doing so, there's a warmth and humanity to the story that makes us a feel for the characters, even though some of them are behaving highly antagonistically, you know, and that's what you have. Even the villains in Ultraman Rising have fairly legitimate reasons for feeling the way they do and doing what they do.
Absolutely. So, you know, you've worked with a lot of IPs and stuff like that throughout your career and everything. Is there any IPs that you would just love to work on? Like, it's a dream project, it would be a dream partnership for you to really take that upon you and your company and really kind of spread the word?
Wow. Over the years, I've had my close calls. Starlight Runner flirted outrageously with Legendary Pictures, and this was just as Godzilla was a twinkle in their eye. So wow, that would have been fantastic to work on. You know, as far as the MonsterVerse is concerned, in and of itself, you know, I have things that I like and things that I prefer to think other things about, but but they're fun. So yes, the MonsterVerse, Universal's Dark Universe. I would have loved to work with Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy, and you know, and figure out a kind of cosmology for those characters. They did not do well with what they wound up with, unfortunately. And of course, you know, I'll eternally wave the Kikaider flag, the Toei Kikaider and Kikaider 01. I just thought they were the bomb. They were just so awesome to me. Really hit home. And when you talk to Toei in Japan about Kikaider, they go, "What?" that thing from Hawaii. You know, so it's hardly remembered, sadly.
Man, that would have been so great to see you work with Legendary. Oh man, who knows? Maybe in the future you'll get a chance.
Maybe.
So we're creeping up here on the 1 hour mark. We're gonna transition here. You said you would like to talk a little bit about G-Fest. So
yeah.
I will turn the floor over to you, good sir, and please tell us what you're thinking.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, G-Fest at the time of this airing is this week. It's on. It starts, I believe, on Friday.
Yes, sir.
And goes through Sunday. And I am going to be at G-Fest.
What?
Nice.
In fact, I'm going to be there with a publisher, Turtle Sky Press, and they're going to announce a book series. The first, to my knowledge, the first American Ultraman book series. It's a middle grade series of novels called Ultra Academy, and it's about the extension of the SSSP into the United States and how they're recruiting students to go through its academy there. And of course, you know, Ultraman's floating around somewhere in the world, but so are kaiju. So that is super awesome. To celebrate, we are bringing a movie to screen at G-Fest. That movie will be Ultraman: The Adventure Begins, the Hanna-Barbera animated feature.
Yes.
I'm super excited about that because first of all, the print that we're showing will be a restored print, and it's going to look gorgeous, and it will be. Can I say this? We're working to make it available to the North American marketplace. It'll
Excellent.
take a little while, but we're very, very happy with the deal, and we're moving forward. Now, the press release guys labeled it a lost film.
Yeah.
And let me explain what lost means as far as the press release is concerned, because some fans have gotten upset about the fact that it was called Lost, because I think it's fairly easy to find if one knows where to look.
Yeah.
And so when I say lost, I mean that the press release is being aimed at mass culture audiences. So, if it's placed, with the New York Times or these various newspapers and magazines, the title of the press release is trying to affiliate the fact that there is a Hanna-Barbera feature film that not many people know about and hasn't been in circulation for many, many years.
Right.
What we're not talking about is the fact that the Blu-ray DVD has been available in Tokyo as of the year 2010 or 2015 or something like that. That's not who the audience is for that lost terminology to be used for. So I know that it's not really lost, that if you tried hard enough and paid enough money, you can get Ultraman: The Adventure Begins. But to most people, it's not immediately accessible. Right. They're not thinking about it that way. In any event, I'll be introducing the film. It's awesome. And the characters in the film are canonical to the Ultraman universe. So they've shown up in live action, introduced in this movie, and have shown up in live action. And that's wild to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the day which and for the panel?
Yes. The panel Ultraman in America, which I'm on with Sky Turtle Nova, will be on Friday at 10 a.m. at G-Fest. It's called Ultraman in America in Ballroom AB.
Okay.
And then there's a second event on Saturday at 10 a.m. Ultraman: The Adventure Begins in International Ballroom ABC.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Right on.
Well, like I said, we are creeping up on that hour mark, and we want to be respectful of your time. Jeff, before we wrap up here, is there anything else you would like to plug or promote, or any other final words you would like to say before we head home here?
Absolutely. Again, I want to thank you and your audience, the fans. You have been, people wonder whether their voices count when it comes to this sort of thing. I'm telling you, they count. They count. Because it's not just my staff that's looking at it. It's not just Subaraya that's looking at the social media expression of the fandom. I am personally looking at and interacting with the fans. There is a great affection. I'm a little protective of them, but that's because I'm a little old school. Mm-hmm. And always know, which generally I think is a good policy in general, that when we communicate, our intention is good and positive. We make mistakes sometimes, and or might not use the exact right word, but the intention is always to proliferate this character who represents courage, hope, and kindness. This character who represents imagination. If we would behave in an ultra fashion, the world would be a better place. And that's the message I'm trying to convey. So follow me on X at Jeff_Gomez, or on LinkedIn at Jeff Gomez. And I'll see you online.
Excellent. Eric, would you have anything you want to say before we?
I mean, just thank you for everything that you're doing for Ultraman and bringing awareness to this character over here in the West, because like we've talked about here for the last hour, that it's just we love this stuff, and we've been part of this stuff or been fans of this stuff for so long that we always want to talk about it and have everybody else into it and everything, and you are doing us a great service on bringing this stuff over. And like Joe mentioned earlier, like there's so much of this stuff in our faces now that we absolutely love it, because that's what we wanted. We wanted that since we were kids and everything. And everywhere we turn, there's something new coming out and everything, for if it's media, if it's merchandise, if it's a video game, if it's whatever. Like we keep seeing Ultraman kind of spreading its wings and touching all of these things. And I thank you for it as a fan personally, because it's just great to see. And just thank you for your time and everything, and your insight on everything. And just keep doing what you're doing, because we do appreciate it as a fan.
Eric, thank you so much. A shout out to the team that made everything that you were talking about possible. There's Danny Simon and Carrie Simon and Laura Cohn at Subaraya Fields in Los Angeles, and my own team is Mark Pensavalli, Chrysula Artemis, Evangelia Artemis Gomez, and of course EJ Kulakundis, who is the editor-in-chief of Ultraman Connection. We're super appreciative of you guys, and we will never surrender.
Never surrender. With that, Jeff, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. We really enjoyed this conversation. I'd like to throw this out there now. We'd love to have you back at a later time, because I think there was honestly a lot of stuff that we would like to talk about that we never got a chance to. And we will both be at G-Fest. Yes. So if I see you, I am definitely going to come up and say hi.
Please, absolutely. Anybody at G-Fest, come and say hi to me.
Absolutely. Hear that. So go say hi to Jeff, follow him on his socials. And if you haven't already, go and watch Ultraman Rising. It is a fantastic film. With that, that'll do it. Everybody, thank you so much. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.